Hey guys, it's Jessica. So a while back, Tracy asked me to make a video about hand stitching. Now I made a previous video, but it was kind of hard to see and the glare was kind of bad. So this is a refilming of all the hand stitching. If you have any questions at the end of the video, please let me know, and most importantly, have fun. Okay, so here are the materials that you're gonna need. So you're going to need fabric of some sort. I have a nice cotton blend. It's most likely muslin. It's nice and sturdy, nice and ironed out so it's flat. I have a pin cushion with pins. This will help hold our fabric together when you fold it over to do your next hand stitch. We'll get to that. A pair of scissors. These are mine, just to cut the thread. Obviously you need some thread. I would choose a very nice bright contrasting color. That way you can really see all of your stitches really well. Then you're going to need a needle. I prefer a small needle. I like something a little bit smaller. My hands are a little bit smaller. Plus it doesn't make as big holes in the fabric, and you can use more of the thread. But if you are uncomfortable with using small needles, you can use a bigger needle to start with. Also, what I have here is called a seam ripper. You don't necessarily need this, but if you make a mistake and you need to take out some of your thread, this is a really helpful tool to have on hand. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to walk you through is how to thread your needle and tie off your thread. Now, not every stitch you're gonna do is gonna need to be knotted, but this first stitch we're gonna do is going to be knotted. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get a nice decent amount of your thread, no longer than an arm's length. If you get it too long, when you're pulling the thread through the fabric, it'll actually knot itself, and it's not a fun time to undo that. So a decent length thread, but not too terribly long. Then you're going to take your needle and you're going to find the eye. The eye is the hole that the thread goes through. And then what you're going to do, if it's helpful, you can actually put the thread in your mouth, get it a little wet, and then put it right through the eye. This is the hardest part. So if it takes you a couple tries, that's okay. It is one of the hardest parts of getting started with sewing, and it takes some practice. All right. So the way I like to tie off my thread, get a nice piece, wrap it around my finger a couple times, pull those loops off, put the thread through, pull it, and then you got a nice knot right there at the end. And that'll hold in place for this kind of material. Then all you have to do is trim this, and you have a knot. Okay, so the first stitch that we're going to be doing is called the running stitch / running based stitch. It's a quick, easy stitch that typically just holds two pieces of fabric together before you're going to sew it together on a machine or back stitching. It's the weakest of all the stitches, and it's the quickest to do. And if something falls off, like say you have an apron and a pocket falls off, you can back stitch it you can running stitch it real quick. It's super weak, but it does the job in a pickle. So what you're first going to do is you're going to take your needle and go to the underneath of the fabric, pull the needle all the way through so it's sitting like this. This hides your thread and your knot. That way nobody can see it. And when you're doing this, you're going to be using thread that's the same color as the fabric, but right now, so you can see it, we're going to be using contrasting colors. All right, so this is the fun part. You're going to go a little bit in front of the knot. You're going to put the needle through, and you're going to gather the fabric onto the needle, just like this. And then you pull it all the way through. Just like that. Super quick, like I said, super easy. And as you can see, there's nothing much to it, so it is kind of weak. but it's super easy to do and a quick pinch. When it's further apart like this and these lines right here are a little bit bigger, it's a base stitch. What that is, it's just a line that helps you follow when you're going to be sewing. When it's a little bit closer, like I'm going to do now, it's a running stitch. Because they are a little bit closer together, they are a little bit sturdier, so if you ever need to tack something on real quick, like an accessory, this is the one you're going to be doing, the smaller stitch. Alright, so you're just going to finish that up to the end, and then we'll show you quickly how to tie off this knot. Okay. So when you're done, you're not going to bring the needle out for the last stitch. It's going to stay behind just like this. So this is the back. Then to tie off this knot, very, very close to where this exit is, you're going to take a couple of pieces of the loom, put the needle through, bring this around 3 or 4 times, pull the needle through, just like that, and it creates a really handy knot. And if you can't get your needle and your thread to create a nice knot at the beginning, you can also do this at the beginning of the fabric as opposed to the hand twirling thing that I showed you. Then all you have to do, leave a very tiny tail. You have to leave a very small tail. If you don't leave a tail, it's going to come undone, so a very small tail. Clip it, and that's your first stitch, guys. First stitch done. Okay, so the next stitch that we're going to be doing is the whip stitch, but first we have to fold our fabric. Since all of your stitches are going to be on one piece of fabric, you have to fold it. That way you can see it going down. So the easiest way to do it is to take your fingers, put it behind, pinch it a little bit, just like this, and bring the fabric up so it's sitting right underneath the previous stitch. Alright, just like that. Then what you want to do is you want to pin it in place. Typically you would iron at this point. We're just going to pin it just so you can see. You should only need three pins maybe. And I find it's best that when you're pinning your fabric, to pin it so that the pointy end is pointed away from you. That way you don't accidentally cut yourself. I cannot tell you how many times I've cut myself on pins before. And that's how you fold your fabric. Super easy. Okay, so you have your garment pinned. So one thing that I do need to mention now that you've done your first stitch is the thread starts to degrade every time you pull it through the fabric. So one way that you can strengthen your thread is by using wax. This is what the wax looks like. It's a nice nifty little tool. All you have to do is take your thread, put it through these little holes, pull it through. I like to do it twice. I coat it in wax, and then it's less likely to fray. Super easy, super convenient. And then you want to rethread your needle, just like this. Like I said, this is the hardest part, so if it takes a couple tries, it takes a couple tries. There we go. Pull it through. Ta-da. Okay. So I have a bad habit of holding my fabric like this and bunching it all up. That will start to wrinkle your fabric, and it does become uncomfortable in your hands. So the easiest way to do it is to hold the shortest end in your hand. That way you can have all of this tailing off behind you and you don't have to worry about it getting in your way. So if you hold it like this, again, with the pointy ends away, it's easier to grip, and your hand doesn't tire as easily either, which is especially important with some of these stitches that we're going to do. Now this one we're about to do is called the whip stitch. It's a nice, quick, easy stitch. It's typically used to hold 2 pieces of garments together, but can also be used for mending purposes. It is one of the faster hand stitching, which is very nice, but it can be quite tedious, especially if you're going to be doing it for hours. The application is extensive and it's sturdier than the running stitch, so it has actual applications in real life. And since it can be seen, you do want to use a color that matches your fabric. Again, for here, it's contrasting thread just so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so this one, we're going to create a little knot. Going to go up through. This fabric is divided just like this. We're going to come through. Leave a little bit of a tail. Go a little bit back from where you were. And you're going to do that a couple times in a row. Then you're going to cement that knot into the fabric. Take a couple of the threads of the fabric, wrap your sewing thread around your needle, and pull through. And then you're going to clip the tail, just like we showed you earlier. Just like that. Now this piece here, up at the top, I do have exaggerated so you can see it. You can make that smaller or as large as you need. You want to typically make it smaller. That way it's not as noticeable. Then what you're going to do, you're going to take your needle, put it through the bottom fabric, and then it goes right along the seam. So the seam is the 2 pieces of fabric where they connect. You're going to do it right along here. And you're going to go, when you bring your needle up, you're going to go up through both pieces of fabric, just like that. And you're going to pull. And then you're going to do that over and over again. You want to try to make the distance between the 2 stitches the same, and you want to make the length of the stitches the same. Now if you can get it in a nice straight line to lie flat against the seam, you will barely be able to see it, and then when the fabric and the thread are matching, you won't be able to see it at all in the audience. One of the benefits is it is quicker than, say, a backstitch, which we will be getting to. Okay, and you're going to be doing this the whole way around, so I'm just going to show you one more time in slow-mo. Down, up through with the 2 pieces, just like that, and pull all the way through. That's what it looks like. Okay, go ahead and finish, and then pause the video, and then when you're done, we'll meet up at the end and I'll show you how to tie off again. Okay, so we're at the end of our whip stitch, and it doesn't have to be super close together at this point. It is meant to be nice and fast. If you want to make the stitches a little bit closer together, you can, but they can be a little bit further apart. So how we end this one, this is your last stitch you've done. You're going to go very, very close to where you just ended. Put your needle all the way through all of the layers of fabric. Flip it over. And then you're going to finish off the knot how I showed you earlier. Take a couple pieces of thread of the actual fabric, put your needle through, tie the thread you're sewing with around 4 or 5 times, and pull through, finish the knot, cut it with a little bit of tail, put your needle off to your side, and that's the whip stitch, guys. Good job. Okay guys, so the next one that we're going to be doing is called the back stitch. Now the back stitch is going to be the backbone of any garment that you make by hand. It is what is going to be making up the seam of your dress or shirt. Or if you just want to make a coin bag, it's going to be the seam of the coin bag. It's the seam stitch. It does take a little bit of time because you're double stitching, and you'll see that in a second. Again, you want to start with it pinned, the pointy end pointing away from you, and hold it how it's comfortable. I'm going to be holding it like this. Now this is one of the stitches that you don't actually have to tie a knot to, which is really, really cool. So you're going to start with your needle and your thread unknotted, just like that. You're going to take your needle, start from the underside of the fabric, let your needle go through all of the layers, just like this. And then I like to hold the thread in between these two fingers. That's a nice reminder to tell you not to pull the thread all the way through the fabric, because you need a nice tail since you're not going to be knotting it. It goes back from your starting point. You put the needle all the way through. Like so. And then that little tail is still there in the back, dangling. And then you do the same thing right over top of itself. This will secure your thread in place. Try to get for the same hole. And that secures it right in place. And you can do that 2 or 3 times if you're worried about it the first couple times and you're not sure if it'll hold. You can do it 3 times just to make yourself feel comfortable. That is a-okay. Just like that. Ooh. Then what you're going to do is your needle's going to go a little bit out in front. I'm going to make these first couple stitches exaggerated so you can really see, and then I'll make them as small as I usually do it. So you take it out in front a little bit, bring the thread the whole way through, and then as close as you can to this hole right here, you put your needle through. And it creates this nice illusion of a line. Now if you can't stitch straight lines by hand, that is okay. You can take a pencil and you can take a ruler and you can trace a line the whole way down. Or you can do what some other people do, is your needles, when you pin your fabric, you do a straight line with your needles and then you just sew along the line of your needles. That's fine too. So I'm going to show you this one more time, really nice and large, and then I'm going to go smaller just so you can see the difference. And as you guys can start to see, this one is going to take a little bit more time than the whip stitch and the back stitch. So you have a nice little bit line, and then if you open up the fabric right here, you can see that while it may not be as sturdy as it's going to be, it is still a sturdy piece. So let's do a few more. Let's do them smaller. That way you can really start to see how nice and sturdy this is. So normally on traditional garments, you're only going to go a couple pieces of thread of the fabric in front. You can get it smaller, even smaller if you want to. show what that looks like right there and put it through. For this one, you have to worry about not letting the fabric pucker. So puckering is when you pull it and it pulls it together like that. If it starts to do that, that's okay. Just take your 2 pieces of fabric and straighten it out a little bit. When you're doing seams, you don't want any puckering. It's super important not to let it pucker. Okay, so I'm going to do a couple more of these just real quick. And then you can see how tighter, how when it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit tighter, it's not really going to go anywhere. Once that's done, that's going to be a nice tight seam. You're going to go all the way down your fabric, and once you're done, you're going to knot it off the same way you did your whip stitch. I will see you guys at the end. Okay, so that is the stitch done. The cool thing about this one is this is a nice straight line, and then you flip it over and it's still a pretty straight line. This is what the back looks like, and that's fine. There's that tail we had at the very beginning. We're just gonna go ahead and clip it. This one you do want to leave a little bit longer of a tail, that way it's not gonna come all the way out. There's the knot at the end right there, almost, you can't even see it, which is really nice. It's hidden within everything else. And then I'm going to show you what this looks like and how sturdy this is. That is not going anywhere. So it's not like those dramatic movies where you can just rip a bodice off of somebody else. It's not going to happen. Nice and sturdy. And you can see how small my stitching is right there. That's about how small you want to get it. You can do a little bit larger, you can do a little bit smaller. It is all up to you and what feels comfortable for you. Okay, so the next stitch that we're going to do is called the blanket stitch. It's a nice little embellishing stitch that you're going to use to secure 2 end pieces of fabric together like this. With this one, you actually want to use a contrasting color of thread. That way it shows up and it looks really nice. Also, to help make it show up and pop a little bit more, you're going to have double thread. We've been doing single thread this entire video, but we're going to be doing double thread for this one. So there you can see it. And you want to put a knot in the end. So there's my little knot. So to start this one, instead of starting all the way at the back, you're actually going to start in the middle of the 2 pieces of fabric right here. You're going to put it through the top layer first. What this does is this hides the knot. Right there, you can see it, right in the middle. So what this does is it hides the knot from view. That way, if it's, let's say, on the end of a sleeve, you can't see it when the sleeve flips over. So you're going to put your needle through the back 2 layers, just like that. All right, and then you're going to go up through the same exact hole where your thread came through before, just like that. Then you're going to pull it almost all the way through, not quite. You're going to leave a little loop just like this, and then the needle goes right in through this little loop, and then you pull and you tighten. Then you go a little bit further over, you go through the back 2 layers, just like this. Make sure that the entrance is lined up with the other entrance. If you need to take your needle out and line it up a little bit better, you can, just like that. Pull it so there's a small loop. Put the needle through the loop again and tighten. And we're going to do it again. Just like that. So as you can see, there starts to become a really nice pattern that's created. It's pleasing to the eye, it's simplistic, it's easy to do, and it's great for all kinds of things like waistcoats, sleeves, bottom hems of skirts or dresses. Also, it could be really nice for a coin purse, really anything. It's nice, simple, easy to do, and pleasing to the eye. All right. So here's what it looks like when they're a little bit closer together. Here's what it looks like when they're a little bit further apart, just to let you see the contrasting. Now the further apart it gets, it does get looser up here, so you just want to make sure it's not so loose that it's going to stick to anything and tear your fabric, or your thread from your fabric, because you don't want that. You're going to be spending time with this, and you want it to look nice and be sturdy. Okay, you're going to do this the whole way down. And then when you're done, you're going to knot it in the back, just like we've been doing with all of our other threads. I'll see you at the end. So as I was sewing this one, I realized there's a nice little shortcut you can do. This is what it looks like so far. So what I've been having you guys do is come up through both threads, pull the needle through, go through the loop, and pull. But if you lay the thread over this way, and then you go through the 2 layers of fabric, when you pull through, it's already in that loop, and then all you have to do, lay it over again, go through the 2, and pull it. It's a much quicker way of doing this, and it still gives you the same results. Just make sure that you're pulling enough, that there's enough tension, not so much that it puckers, but enough that it goes straight across. Just gonna do a couple more for you real quick. Getting towards the edge makes it a little bit more difficult. Just like that. And then what you want to do is you come through, just like at the beginning, the same hole. Take 2 over, 2 of the threads over, which are also known as grains, 2 over, down through the bottom, flip it over, and then just finish it off the same way you've been doing every other stitch. Take 2, 3 greens, wrap it around a couple times, 3, 4, pull it through, and clip the tail. I need new scissors, guys, sorry. And then that's what it looks like. It's a nice little accessory piece to the edge of whatever fabric you're doing. Okay guys, those are the first 4 stitches that you'll be learning in this series. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'll be happy to go over them again at the beginning of the next video. As always, have fun, and then if you have any questions, just let me know. Have a great day.